Welcome to this episode of Truth Bridge, a new video series of Mill City Church where we are seeking to bridge the truth of the Bible into modern life, taking a very ancient faith, Christianity, a very ancient text like the Bible, and bridging it into our everyday life here in modern America. And so today's question that we want to address and talk about is, what is a disciple maker, or what is disciple making? And to be able to get there, I want to start with just defining what is a disciple. And at the very base level, base understanding of the word disciple, it means a learner. So you might think about this even in our modern culture, right? So you think about a carpenter, and you're an apprentice with a carpenter. You may be a disciple of that master carpenter, and you're watching him, and he's teaching you how to sand down a piece of wood, or to be able to sharpen an edge, and to create that perfect angle and put that trim together. And so you're a disciple of him. You're learning his method of building with wood. Or you may think about it with music, and you could be a guitarist, and you have a particular artist or a particular instructor you have, and that virtuoso is teaching you music and teaching you how to play chords, and you learn from his school, and so you're a disciple of his masterclass of playing guitar. And it's the same principle with being a disciple of Jesus. Now, in the Bible, we are taught that in Mark chapter 3, Jesus originally called or appointed 12 original disciples to himself. And in Mark chapter 3, verse 14, the text tells us that he appointed these 12 that they might be with him, and then he might send them out to preach. And so at a very simple understanding of what it means to be a disciple of Jesus, we follow Jesus, we listen to Jesus' teaching through the scriptures, we pattern our lives after him, so the things that he cares about, we care about. What he commands us to obey, we obey. What he commands us to avoid, we avoid. And there's a relational element there, right? Because the text tells us that he appointed them that they might be with him first. And so that's why we pray. It's why we read the scriptures. It's why we obey him. It's what, as a Christian, we say we walk with Jesus, because there's that relational element there. All right? But then there's more to being a disciple. It's not just that we sit and learn, and that we simply feast on relationship with Jesus just ourselves. It says in verse 14 of Mark 3 that they were to be with him, that he might send them out to preach. And so the idea is he wants us to be disciple makers. And that's at the very heart of the Great Commission in Matthew chapter 28. After Jesus resurrects from the grave, he tells his disciples, "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations." So that's why we say the word disciple maker, because Jesus commanded us to make disciples. Now, what making disciples means is that as I walk with Jesus, as I learn from Jesus, I pass on to others what I've experienced and what I have learned from Christ. And so the truths I learn, the sermons I listen to, the books I read, the scriptures I memorize, I don't just read those or learn just for learning's sake, that there's an end to that. No, instead, I learn and I take in so that I may give and I may share. And so as we make disciples, for those of us who have grown up in church, or we've been around church for any length of time, sometimes the idea of being a disciple maker can be really intimidating. And it's because we don't know all the answers, or perhaps I can't answer all of my friends' questions, or I don't even understand all the different points of theology. So how in the world do I have responsibility or even have the ability to help someone else know Jesus? But here's where I want to encourage you. When Jesus commands us to make disciples, there's no educational level required to do that. There's no maturity level at which we're supposed to attain to before we do that. It's simply this: what I have learned and what I do understand, I pass on to others. And it's why even at our church at Mill City, when we give you the little listening guides, the notes where you learn from the sermons, we challenge you, go share this with someone else. Sure, you may not preach it or teach it exactly like I or a member from our pastoral leadership team would teach it, but you have the basic truth there that you can pass on and sit down with someone else and open the scriptures. And so just at the simplest level, being a disciple maker is learning from Jesus and passing it on to others. And it's what Paul talked about in 2 Timothy 2:2. So a few years after Jesus left earth, Paul wrote this to his young mentee, Timothy. He said, "What you have heard from me in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to faithful men so that they may be able to teach others also." Do you see that principle? I learn, I receive, I give to others so that they may give to someone else. And in a nutshell, that's what it means to be a disciple and to be a disciple maker. Thanks for watching.